Well, coming up on today's show, Elon Musk says Norwegians are right to be upset. A new report says EVs will match ICE cars in 2024. And a big newspaper here in the UK says the Nissan Leaf is much more than a car with an electric motor. But first of all, good morning, good afternoon and good evening, wherever you're listening around the world. Hello and welcome. With the news you need to know about electric cars and the move towards sustainable transport. Hello if you're listening to us as the podcast on iTunes or the usual podcast platforms. Hello if you're listening to the audio on YouTube or some other means like Amazon Alexa. Thank you for tuning in today. And we'll start a brand new week with news of Mercedes and someone ring the Tesla killer bell. The headline's been rolled out. This is from Mihnea, who is writing for autoevolution.com, and she has used the Tesla killer headline. We see it occasionally. I think I've used it myself in the past without realising. It's a little bit lazy. We've seen it 1,000 times. Is the Mercedes EQC a Tesla killer? Let's find out. It's been track testing at the Nurburgring, and it's one of the most important things that European companies do for the sake of handling and reliability. Well, the new video's made its way onto YouTube. It's about a minute and a half long, and this, when you see how hard the Mercedes is being driven around the Nurburgring, could be the edge that Mercedes is looking for to persuade people that they've made a real performance EV. And the Mercedes EQC has been spotted by somebody with the video cameras out at the Nurburgring. The EQC, previewed by the EQ Concept just a couple of years ago now, almost ready to be launched in 2019, will be presented this fall, this autumn. By 2022, Daimler want to have 10 pure BEVs on the market, 3 of them being from Smart. So if you're looking for something a little bit bigger, you haven't got to wait too much longer. The YouTube channel I found this on was Automotive Mike, and I've put a link in the show notes. And this is interesting how close they are to being ready. Now, the Audi e-tron, the e-tron Quattro, as it's now known, was meant to be beating the Mercedes EQC to market and certainly to launch. However, the Audi launch was, cancelled. The original launch was cancelled because of certain, we'll call them corporate events, which involved the law. So that's been put back to another time in North America, which means that Mercedes could get the jump on Audi. And we know the Jaguar I-Pace is already out there, but it could mean that the big SUV from a legacy OEM is Mercedes, not which everybody thought, which was going to be the Audi e-tron Quattro. Well, moving on, and Nora at Electrive says that in Norway, where once Tesla was the first to satisfy a stirring hunger for EVs, Norwegians now complain about delays and slow service. Elon Musk has admitted problems, but points to Norway's regulation as being responsible. Well, the issue may run deeper, though. A report that ranked the electric car maker 4th on Norway's national list of company complaints. The Norwegian Consumer Council is a government-funded agency and said it was contacted 118 times regarding Tesla this year, moving the company up from 24th place last year. Clients said they struggled to reach customer service and also complained about late deliveries. Well, Elon Musk himself said earlier this week on Twitter, Norwegians are right to be upset with Tesla. We're having trouble expanding our service facilities in Oslo, especially. Can solve quickly with Tesla mobile service vans, but awaiting government permission to do so, says Elon's tweet. And actually, when you follow a lot of Tesla drivers and owners on those Reddit communities, those that do either have, unfortunately, accidents and are waiting for insurance claims, or those that need a part, it seems to be on Reddit where people are most vocal about Tesla complaints and having to wait weeks and in some cases months for spare parts. And it's almost a running joke now when someone needs a part over on those communities about how long you'll have to wait. And that's a shame, and it's something that Tesla are working really hard on. And actually, on a bigger scale, what do you think about this? So when Tesla were a relatively niche manufacturer of the Model S and the Model X, they didn't have as many customers, and the ones that they did have were high-end customers. So if your Model X was off the road, your Model S was off the road, maybe you went back and you drove your partner's big Mercedes or Audi if you needed to get to work, or the second or third car that you own. Actually, the Model 3 is probably going to be bought by people who, in order to buy it, have sold their primary car. the Model 3 becomes their only car. And actually, not only are you selling them in massive numbers, but you're selling them to the type of people who need their car on the road. They haven't got a spare Mercedes sitting around in their triple garage. So, is that going to be making a rod for their own back? Is it something that Tesla need to get sorted alongside production hell and the aftermarket care that we know all the other OEMs that are playing desperate catch-up to Tesla already have all those dealerships in place, and all of that infrastructure is in place, which Tesla doesn't have of the same scale. What do you think? Leave some comments and let me know if I'm reading it the right way, and let me know how you see it as well. You can email the show, by the way, hello@evnewsdaily.com. That is hello@evnewsdaily.com. Well, according to a new report in Australia, EVs are on track to match the price and range of internal combustion engines sometime in the year 2024. 6 years away seems a long way to me. Now, the forecast says that sales will grow slowly for the next 10 years, and then they'll really take off in 2027. That's the base scenario without additional support, says Mark Kane for Inside EVs. Well, if the government introduced subsidies, it keeps the manufacturers and the customers happy, sales could take off as early as 2021. Plug-in cars, says Mark at Inside EVs, would take 50% market share by 2030 and 90% by 2050, according to this new Australian report. Seems a little pessimistic, maybe a little bit geared to Australia, which unfortunately is still also playing catch-up in terms of EVs. Well, it's always good to have a look at how the masses see EVs, because let's face it, everybody will be driving an EV soon. And one thing which will throw you about the new Nissan Leaf, says the Guardian newspaper, is the e-pedal. Flick this button and you can drive the car with one pedal, they say. You press the throttle as usual, but remove your foot and the car applies automatic regenerative braking. The quicker you lift your foot off, the heavier the braking, says Martyn Lee for a big newspaper. We call it the Guardian. Maybe you use the website around the world if you're not listening to us in the UK. And it's interesting what the mainstream media says about EVs. Well, Martyn continues by saying that the Leaf swept up dozens of awards the moment it was launched. All well deserved, he says. But the true measure of its standing in the automotive world is that it in no way feels like a gimmicky electric car. It feels like a real car for the real world. You can read the rest of that article online. I'll put a link in the show notes. And finally, I thought this would make you smile, kind of like a funny and finally for the first one of the week. The article is titled When Tech Founders Get Hot. And this will make you smile. As founders become more successful, raking in billions, they can afford fashion and treatments and trainers and regimens that might make them hotter. Jack Dorsey is the subject of one of these, clearly spending his hard-earned billions on grooming and fashion. Jeff Bezos has got himself a trainer and some high-quality growth hormones. And Elon Musk, says the article on dig.com where I found it, he shelled out for some great hair plugs and made himself sexy, according to this. And it's actually interesting, they did put a picture side by side of Elon, which was 10, maybe 12 years ago, and then one now. And it is quite a transformation. You look at those old pictures of Elon Musk, and he was definitely looked a little more geeky at the time. And the article says he's definitely made himself a lot hotter, along with Jeff Bezos and Jack Dorsey. From geeks to pin-ups. I'll put a link in the show notes if you fancy a little bit of a smile. Well, heading on to some of the feedback we've had in the last couple of days over the weekend. If you've not caught the weekend editions, by the way, they're all online on iTunes, all the podcast channels like Google Play and Spotify and all those things, and Stitcher, TuneIn, of course. This is some feedback from one of our regular contributors, which is iCage, and we were talking about the Nissan Leaf. And that picture, that tweet from a couple of weeks ago from the Swiss fast charging company. And I was saying I was a little surprised that Nissan weren't having it taken down. There's not been an official announcement of the 60 kilowatt hour or even the 64 kilowatt hour with 60 usable Nissan Leaf. They mentioned it a little while ago that there was a bigger one coming. Well, iCage says that they haven't made a secret of the bigger battery coming, as well as the Nismo. The Nismo will arrive, this is great knowledge by the way, the Nismo Leaf will arrive on the 19th of July, so 10 days' time. That's the announcement in 10 days' time. And he does say thank you very much to Electrified Journeys Japan for that date. Hi to James Chapman, says, have you heard anything about the new Renault Zoe due for release next year? Not the engine upgraded one, the upgraded motor that's now out. They had some info released, but he says nothing else. I can't believe they're sitting back and waiting for developments, or maybe they are. Brilliant. Let's see if anyone listening to the podcast right now can update James. Let us know. Are there even more Renault Zoe updates on the way? They've already updated the battery pack in the same space as the old one. Already updated the motors as well for that kind of 50 to 70 or 30 to 70 mile an hour push, which was kind of missing a little bit. Well, we were talking about temperatures yesterday. We're having a heat wave here in the UK. And Mark Tiller says that 30 degrees C, that's an average summer temperature. 40 degrees C plus is not unusual here in Australia. It's why he won't be buying the new 40 kilowatt hour Leaf, because he wants battery cooling on whatever EV he eventually buys. Maybe an i3, he says. Expensive. He nearly went to the BMW dealer yesterday, he says, for the i3, but it's just too much. No, I totally agree. I mean, we've got some really hot weather here, 30 degrees over the weekend, and this week's looking like 25 to 30 degrees C, which is very hot for the UK. I mean, we do get warm summers, but it's been an extended period of time, and I know what you mean about battery temperatures. And finally, this is a bit of a comment from the podcast 3 or 4 days ago, by the way, when we were talking about some of the EV myths, and regarding EV myths being slower. Well, 11K says, I have to say I may be contributing to the impression about EVs being slower. When I take my Leaf on a multi-charge trip, I'm usually plodding along in the slow lane to stretch the car's endurance. I must admit, you do see a few EVs sometimes on the inside lane doing 50-55, and you think to yourself, well, I do, like, you're just heading to the next charger. I know what you're doing. But you do wonder whether those other kind of ICE drivers that are pounding past at 70, 75, 80 miles an hour are looking at EVs on the inside lane, presuming that's the fastest they can go. I hope not. Don't worry, my friend. You are not giving EV drivers a bad name. Well, you can leave us your comments online if you want to. The comment section of all the usual places that you get the podcast, like iTunes. If you want to leave a little rating review on there, that'd be amazing. You can leave comments really easily on the YouTube channel. You can email the show if you want to. It's hello@evnewsdaily.com. There's 174 previous episodes, all on the usual podcast channels. Even on Spotify these days, if that's where you get your music from, you can get your podcasts from there. And we are fortunate to be included in their little podcast community there, with a couple of EV podcasts to listen to. If you want to come and say hi on the socials, you can at EV News Daily on Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you tomorrow.